Friends is this concept that I came up with laying in bed one night. I have all these close friends who have these wonderful stories that can help change the world, life experiences that can help other people believe in themselves, hold tight to their dreams and make their dreams reality. On Feeling Friends, we talk about God, we talk about love, relationships. I have celebrity friends, I have non-celebrity friends. I have church members, family members. But when you watch and listen to Feeling Friends, you will learn and you will laugh. It's a community of friends helping to build each other up. So tune in to Feeling Friends every Sunday on WHCR 90.3 FM, or you can catch me on YouTube at Feeling Friends Radio. All right, I'll see you there. WHCR 90.3 FM, the voice of Harlem. What's up, everybody? It's me, Phil, and I'm so happy to be back live on air with you, my friends. I've got a great guest in the studio. My new friend, Miss Annette Alvarez, is coming to the stage. She has spent years in the entertainment industry, has been a staple in Harlem and New York, and she's going to bring us some wisdom today. So without further ado, I'm going to bring Annette Alvarez to the stage. Hey, Annette.
I love that open. I did not know I lived by a famous person. We've lived on the same floor for like 7 years.
Yeah. Well, I've been here for a while,
and we respect each other on an apartment level. So
exactly.
it takes time.
It takes time, and I'm so grateful I met you, and I'll never forget. I said, well, we had a conversation one day in the elevator. He said, I'm a manager, and I said, oh, great. And it's New York. We all busy, and I had no idea Mr. Det was so awesome, and we just have an awesome floor as well. And so I'm so grateful. We really do. You'll be surprised. In New York is one of those places that you just don't know who you live next to. You really don't. And so I'm grateful for you. How you doing today?
I'm doing good. It's Friday, and I've had a really long but really fruitful and work-filled energy week.
Absolutely. That's good to hear. Good to hear. So let's go ahead and jump right into this show. Let's tell the people who you are.
My name is Annette E. Alvarez. I live in Harlem, Central Harlem. I've been here for about, 14 years, because I lived at 471st, and before that I lived at 440 West. But I was born in New York in Brooklyn, down the block from what is now the Barclays Center. But that was not the way my block was back in 1958 when I was born. And I lived there through 1972, and then I moved to Miami, where I worked in the television industry. And I was a journalist. I produced TV shows. I did a lot of stuff. And then in 1985, but my goal was always to come back to New York. That was I moved to New York I moved to Miami when I was 12, with my goal was to always come back to New York. That was it. I was 12 years old, already thinking of how I'm going to get back here. That didn't happen till 1990. Wow. And that's when and you know what? It's interesting how the universe does things, and sometimes you don't know why it does what it does. But with time passing, then you think back. The only reason I was able to leave Miami was because my mom died. My mom died very young. My mom was 50. Had my mom not died, I would not have left Miami. I was fine. I would have figured out how to get my entertainment spirit working somehow in Miami.
Right.
But then I said, okay, what am I going to do now? My mom died. What I was doing, there was no more wiggle room for me to grow. So I went back to school. I went back to the University of Miami, got my bachelor's in film and television, but I still wasn't ready. I still didn't. That little voice was not ready to move to tell me go move. So I went to law school, just on a total whim. There's nothing in my life that would have said she's going to want to go to law school. But I did. I had to buy time myself in Miami. And the only thing that I could do with my bachelor's in TV and film and theater was law school. So I got into the University of Miami Law School. And then by the time I graduated in 1990, I was ready to move to New York. And I did.
What an amazing story. What's your sign?
I'm a Cancer.
Cancer. Okay, you sound like a Gemini. You're like on the cusp, because that's what I do. I keep it moving. You tell a story about July. Okay. You tell a story about your mom dying so young. How did that affect you as a young lady? I'm sure it really hurt you. But how did that?
I'm an only child, and I was very,
Right.
very, very close to my mother. And my
Mhm.
mother and my father both came to America in the 50s from Cuba. This was
Mhm.
not during the Castro, when everybody left in the 1960s, the scene in The Godfather where Michael Corleone kisses his brother in the airport in Cuba and says, "There's a plane leaving for you, get on it." And I can't believe
Mhm.
it was you, Fredo. I can't believe it was you. That's when all the Cubans came to Miami. My parents came like regular immigrants.
Okay.
Actually, I think it was chain migration, so I could be sent back, considering
Right.
the.
That's a whole nother conversation, you know.
That's a whole other conversation. So my
Yeah.
parents came in the 50s, and my mom had nobody else here from her family in Cuba. So
Mm.
I was, so that made me even get closer to her because I was really her only blood relative. And I
Yes.
really loved my mom. And my father had his brothers and sisters. My father, was a man. You know how men
Right.
are. They kind of go with the flow. And
Right.
I wouldn't have left my mom because I was really close to her, and that not having any other family in Miami or in America made us closer.
So your parents they moved to Miami, then they came up here. Is that to New
No,
York?
they moved to Brooklyn. Everybody went to Brooklyn from
Oh,
Cuba.
they came straight to Brooklyn. Oh, okay. They came straight to
They
Brooklyn.
straight to Brooklyn. They came because
Mr. Pearl. Okay, cool.
I think, because they don't talk about this.
Mhm.
I have lots and lots and lots and lots of pictures. Like typical immigrants from the 50s, they have their Kodak camera and they took
Mhm.
picture. I walked right and they took a picture. I walked left,
Really?
they took a picture. Annette gets up in the morning, let's take a I have pictures of
That's
everything.
good though. Yeah.
Yeah, I've been able to piece together their story through the
Mhm.
pictures. So
And that
what I
means a
think
lot.
happened is my grandmother, by this time in Cuba, was divorced with 6 kids and remarried somebody else. I don't know how this happens in the 40s, but it did.
Mhm.
So I think my biological grandfather had some connection to New Jersey. So
Okay.
he was already here. And my
Wow.
grandmother asked him, "Bring your kids over."
Mhm.
And he did, but they all ended in Brooklyn, but for one. The oldest went to live with his father in New Jersey, in Elizabeth. So no,
Elizabeth.
Brooklyn, 527 Dean Street.
That is so funny because the reason why I'll never forget the reason why I wanted to move to New York when I was 5 years old. I was watching an episode of Sesame Street, and they were talking about Cubans. It's so funny that you told that story. And the Cubans were drinking coffee, and they were explaining on how the Cuban coffee was to little kids. This is like 1990. So funny, 1990. And I said I want to move to New York when I was eating my Lucky Charms. So that's so funny that I remember that. And yeah. So Cubans have a very huge influence yeah,
Well,
on America.
um, my the actors that I manage when
Mhm.
before COVID, when I would have get-togethers in my house here. Actually,
Mhm.
the last one we had was when I had just moved into this apartment right before COVID, and they all know that I'm the Cuban coffee queen, so they give me cups that say Cuban coffee queen, and
Oh
I
wow.
all
Okay.
I drink is Bustelo in the morning, 2 cups of Bustelo for
Bustelo.
cafe.
You drink Bustelo. You drink one cup. You can build a house, mow the yard, change the floors. You drink one cup of that. It's a whole other.
But here's the thing:
That's the
what people
strongest
don't
coffee.
understand. But I've been drinking Cuban coffee, I believe, since I was like 5 years old. That's what my
Wow.
parents would give me right before they sent me off to school.
Really? And you were just
Mhm.
yep. That's so interesting. That's so interesting. But New York really shaped you, and it's New York back in the day is not New York now. Do you miss the old New York? I miss the old New York from like the late '90s, early 2000s.
Oh my God, my old New York was going to downtown Brooklyn and going to McCrory's with my mom and
Mhm.
going to Corvettes. That was where my dad would go because that was a
What is
boy
Corvettes? What is
store.
that?
Corvettes
Oh,
was
it's a
the
store.
downtown Brooklyn, the downtown Brooklyn where all the stores still are now. That's where we
Mhm.
would go. We could walk that from 527 Dean Street, but that's where they did their grocery shopping. There's a Goodwill now that used to be Bohax. And
Oh, I
that's
know
when my
exactly.
parents, yeah, but let me tell you my Bohax story. Martin Luther King was assassinated, I believe, on a Thursday.
Mhm.
I believe that was because I believe he was.
Mhm.
Because Thursday, I put the pieces together from the one memory that I have about Bohax. Um, And I guess Thursdays when New Yorkers would get paid from the factories,
Okay.
and they would go grocery shopping. And we went to Bohack's to do not the Cuban groceries. The Cuban
Hmm.
groceries were in New Jersey. That's when we went to
Really?
the Cuban butcher. Yes, we just bought
Okay.
like the canned tuna, the canned corn, all that stuff in Bohack's. But that night on our return from Bohack's, my grandfather, who lived, the entire Alvarez family basically lived in that one building, and opposite
Mhm.
me was my grandfather, and he met us
Okay.
at the steps of our apartment, and he said they just shot Martin Luther,
Wow.
and I'm going, damn. I
Mm.
don't remember JFK. I don't remember Robert. I remember from watching the videos, because you see
Right.
them.
Right. Mhm.
But I remember him saying they just shot Martin Luther. So and I think I looked it up just to make sure of the Thursday fact. I do believe it was a Thursday, and I think that was
Mhm.
payday, and we were just coming back. Yeah,
It's so
yeah.
funny that you mentioned that, and it's so funny that you mentioned your grandfather uh, told you all that. What was it like during the era of in New York for
That's really
minorities?
that's really good. That's a very good question. Let me just turn off my phone.
No problem. Yeah.
527 Dean Street, which is literally down the block from the Barclays Center.
Mhm.
Not the one that's facing in.
And it's so
I
funny you said that. I lived in Brooklyn for years before I moved to Harlem because I couldn't afford Harlem, and now that I finally could afford it, I left Brooklyn to came to Manhattan. But yeah, I can see exactly where, yeah,
It's
what you're
facing
describing.
the Prospect Park. I know because Barclay faces to Fulton and that way.
Right,
But
right.
I'm talking about the backside of the Barclay Center, which faces. If
Places
you
the
walk
park
down, you'll
prospect.
end up to Prospect Park. So it's the down that
Right.
side. So that was my block, 527 Dean Street, and I went to
Mhm.
school there. I went to Catholic school there, what have you. The 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 block was fine. It was basically immigrants and African Americans.
Really.
That it was
Mhm.
Irish, Puerto Ricans. The Puerto Ricans would sell the tamales for
Mhm.
Christmas. They would no, sorry, not the tamales, the pasteles,
Pasteles.
and that's I still haven't been able to get a pastele like the one sold when I was a kid, door to door
Mhm.
on 527 Main Street. The milkman delivered the milk. I
Mhm.
remember one day my mom says, "Give him a tip." I didn't know what that was, so I let him keep the change. The change was a
Okay.
$20 bill. My mother ran
Oh
after the
no.
guy to get the money.
$20 was a lot of money back then.
$20 is a lot of money. And you know what? She kept it. She kept it in her booby. That's
The
where
first,
everyone kept their money back then. Yeah.
yeah.
And there was Irish. There were African Americans. My father's best friend was the African American lady that lived next door to us downstairs. When we would
Right.
leave for Miami for 2 weeks, he would give her the keys to our apartment and said, "Here, take
Really.
care of us." And
Really.
that was protect. That was it. That was it. Um, so I mean, they set up. I learned the smell of fire, smoke. I always knew that when someone had burned a mattress because you could
Mm.
smell it. They would burn
So they burn
mattresses.
mattresses outside or something? What would they? Why would they
Yeah,
burn that?
whatever, garbage. Just kids fooling around or whatever they were doing. The fire hydrant was out, so I was never allowed out without my parents, but
Hmm.
I could look out the window and see the fire hydrant and the kids playing hopscotch and
Yeah.
double dutch, which I'm not very good at. But it was the beginning. I will tell you this: it was the beginning of the airplane glue sniffing thing.
Really.
So I
It's so funny
remembered.
you say that. The movie Spike Lee did Crooklyn. There were
Mhm.
guys on the stoop who sniffed glue. I forget their names or whatever, but he talks
Yeah,
about them
they would.
sniffing glue. That was in the 60s. I think it might have been in the 60s. His movie was in the 60s. So that's so funny you say that.
It drops
Yeah.
into the 70s, and they would be passed out on our stoop, and we would have to walk over them.
Really.
The kids. They were kids, yeah. Other than yes, they look. My father. I tell my father, who I think I is where I get my gumption from.
Mhm.
I don't know how was what. Well, let's put it this way: we were able to move in 1972 to Miami, where he opened a
Mhm.
factory I mean, they were factory workers. They worked down at where the Barclays Center used to be the factory, so they worked there. And then at night, they had a factory in our bedroom, in our apartment, and they would work more at night. So my parents worked. At 5 o'clock. My mom would feed us and go to work, and
Go to work.
I learned how to get 2 cents for every grommet, I think it's called, that you would put on this little machine that you'd step on, and it'd put like a snap.
Mhm.
So they would pay me
Yeah.
2 cents. My
Oh
father
wow.
sold electronics. My father, I would go with him to the Diamond District. My father was very entrepreneurial. Yeah,
He had to make his money. And I think a lot of people back in the day, my mother was telling me a story about her mom and how she would sell dresses to all the ladies. And so it's just so many stories that people had to make it back in the day. And he gave you
yeah,
the gumption to do what you're doing. And you have a wonderful company where you help multi-ethnic uh,
talent.
talent really make a difference. And let's jump into that. So what made you
Yeah,
decide to go into entertainment? I know you started off, you got your degree in
I
entertainment.
my
What made you
my
want
my my reason for always coming back to New York is because I always wanted to go into entertainment as a little kid. I mean, I say
to
TV
be an
guides.
actor? You want to be a star, or did you want to?
I think at some point my dream was that I wanted to act. When my eighth grade counselor, Mrs. Counts, who I will never forget her name, this
Mhm.
white woman, said, "What do you want to do now that you're graduating?" And I said, "I want to go to LaGuardia, which was the performing arts school back then. Now it's called
Mhm.
LaGuardia, but it was in Manhattan at the in yeah."
Right.
And she looked at me. She says, "But what's your talent?" And I mean, I was all of 11. I don't know. I mean, that was not the way you deal with kids. Oh my
Right.
God, that's great. Let's work on it together. But no,
Right.
she went
Yeah.
straight to the heart. Like, okay, so what do you do?
Mhm.
And that totally just kiboshed it for me.
Really.
I never, but yeah, that's why it's really hard. You have to be careful how you speak to kids because depending on their
I think
temperament,
so too. Yeah. I
you
believe
have to be,
really what you say to kids and how, and back in the day, people were just they were just different kind of people. They weren't as
yeah,
empathetic and as they are now. Um, but you have to watch what you say. You got to watch who you speak to
yeah,
and how you speak to them. You never know. It's that one conversation that might change a person's life. You might be able to just speak to them and say, "Hey, how you doing today?" And that might
yeah.
change every person. Yeah.
So, so I went. So that was it. So I was always involved in journalism and theater. At my high school, I wrote the high school play and I directed that. I was always involved. When I went
Okay.
to college, I was in journalism. So I was always
Mhm.
in the periphery of it. Then what
Right.
happened is I moved to New York, and I get jobs that I all hated, and I always trust my gut.
You have
So,
to.
for example, well, this is my gut in my determination to come back to New York. Between my second and third year of law school, I got an internship in the summer with the Brooklyn DA.
Mm.
So I'm going, oh my God, this is going to be it. I'm going to go work at the Brooklyn DA in the summer. They're going to love me and they're going to hire me. And off to New York I go. Okay. I was there 1 week when I realized, you know what? This is not for me.
And
And I
for
went
you,
to HR. I went to HR and I said to her, you know what? This isn't for me. And she smiled. I think she appreciated the fact that I jumped ship before they spent all the money training me, to be quite
right?
honest.
Yeah.
So then
Mhm.
back to New York I go. And I said, I have to find another way. And I found
Mhm.
another way. But then once I was here, I had to figure out how to get to entertainment.
Mhm. Yeah.
And every time I had a job, I hated it. And but every job got me to where I was supposed to be next. That's the interesting thing. And the next job was the job that put me on unemployment for a year and gave me
Mm.
I was a writer and gave me severance and gave me help. And I'm going, well, this
Wow.
is this is a sign. I am gonna go to what I always wanted to do, which is go to
Absolutely.
Strasbourg. Go to Strasbourg. I went to Strasbourg to study
You
acting.
went to Lee Strasberg. Yes.
Yes,
Right. Okay.
that was my
Yes.
dream. That was always my dream. And that's where I met the actor who said to me, can you pretend to be my manager and tell so and so, because he was kind of famous in his country? And can you tell him that I don't want to do it or I do want to do it? And I said,
Mm.
sure, why not? And that got me thinking. And I went to my business partner who I met at law school, who hated being a lawyer. And I said, you want to start a business? She said,
Mm.
sure. And I said, you want to manage actors? Sure. Uh, let's make it multi ethnic. talent because the first two guys were diverse. So I said, let's make it multi-ethnic talent. And we were the first and we've been doing it for over 30 years.
That is real. That's an awesome story. The power of you trusting your gut. I believe the power of trusting God, because I believe that's the force that tells, listen, this is what you should do. But if you just go with that, it leads you where you need to be. That's a powerful statement. So I appreciate that. I want to talk more about that. Do you use that in every day of your life, trusting your
Every
gut
day.
and trusting
Oh
every
my
day?
God, every day. Every day.
How did you get to that point, though? How did you get to that point to just trust your gut?
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I know people call it intuition, your gut, that
Mhm.
inner voice. At the end of the day, it's all the same thing. It's the source, God,
Right.
universe talking to you. And you just have
Right.
to learn to listen. And
Listen to
I
it.
guess I've learned through the years because I've always been very intuitive. And
Right.
I know for a fact, like I tell people, you want to do something, keep the eye on the prize. And you could
Mhm.
veer off a little, but you can't get off of it
Right.
totally.
Yes, that's a good idea. Yeah.
And that's always what I tried to do. No matter where I was, I always kept the eye on the prize.
Right.
And I
It's so
knew
funny you
when,
said that. Yeah.
no, go ahead.
I not to cut you off, sorry. But
Mm-mm.
I started acting years ago, and my parents, I wanted to be acting like when I was a little kid. And they said, you got to go to college. And when you go to college, you can do what you want to. And but I understood that I had to pay bills and you got to eat. And for a long time, I was hungry and I had to pay my rent in New York. But I had to figure out a way to just go with the flow. And this is
Mhm.
how it's going to happen. You get jobs here and there, and then you just never know. Your neighbor might be an agent. You just never know. So you just go with the flow. You trust yourself. You trust God. But it's one of those things. I ran into a friend. He was a big director, and I told you about him. And I was walking down the street after church one day just to go get lobster. I used to go get lobster after church. And I was walking back. My GPS kept messing up. And I was like, what is going on with my GPS? And it took me to another street and I ran right into him. And he's a huge director. And he said, Phil. And I was like, what there? So, and it just never know when you trust your instincts and just go with the flow. Just whatever's going to happen, just roll with it. And everything's
But
going to work
don't you
out.
think that GPS getting all convoluted is the way it's like that story that
It's
you
something
hear
in it.
where
Yeah.
the story that you hear of the floods somewhere and there's a guy on holding on to something and a raft comes by and he misses and then a boat comes by and then something else comes by and he goes, God, why have you forsaken me? And he goes, what do you
Right. Yep.
mean? I sent you a raft, I sent you a boat, I sent you a ship.
Exactly.
What more do you want? And
What more do you want?
that's a person who doesn't have a clue as to how to listen to himself.
Yeah, and that's a terrible thing. You spend a lifetime trying to figure it out. You've really
Mhm.
helped people. How do you feel helping make a difference in the entertainment industry? Giving people the opportunity to follow their dreams. That means a lot, especially to a person like me. What does that mean to you?
I what does that mean to me?
Does
Um,
it have- do you get a feeling of excitement and joy knowing that you're giving somebody an opportunity to follow their dreams?
I yes, yes, but but this
Mhm.
business for people of color is so difficult
Mm.
that my joy is not necessarily because I got them an audition. My joy comes from fighting to get that audition or to make them
Why?
be seen.
Wow. Why is it so
That
difficult?
it's very difficult. I mean, it's all inside baseball. It's all inside baseball, and I'm actually writing a book
Mm.
that will talk about all this. And it's basically the conversation we're having. How Brooklyn and my parents made the first line of the book is, "I'm afraid of everything. I'm afraid of nothing." And
Mm.
it's true because I am afraid of everything, but I'm also afraid of nothing. And those
Right.
two things help me fight the fight. I'm fighting a fight right now that is huge,
Really.
huge, yes, huge. And and yeah, and I always tell my actors that if anybody were to look me up, like they want to do intel on me,
Mhm.
you can find stuff about me online. That's all
Mhm.
good stuff. There's nothing bad online. It's all good stuff.
Yeah.
But if you were to talk to people that I deal with, they will know that I don't do anything for the money.
Mm.
I don't do anything for, and I don't think you can. I think if you put the eye on the money, you lose what's going on. I have so
Well, I
much
think that you have
joy.
a joy with that. That's a joy. You'd
Huh?
like to cut you off. That's joy. That's your joy. Because clearly acting is that's an entire world where there's a lot of money. And so when you are doing it for the love, that means a huge thing. That
I'm
means
doing
a
it for
lot.
the love because it is really hard for a person of color. And now with DEI becoming what DEI is becoming, it's even going to
Mhm.
be hard. I mean, it's going to be harder. There's so
Yeah.
many things right now that is impacting. First it was COVID, then there was the actor strike, and now you can throw in there the fires in LA, but I don't know how much of an impact that is. But still, it's an energy. I mean, it's like, oh my
Right.
God, we still haven't gotten out of COVID, and now we're getting fires in LA. And then throw into
Yeah.
there, Trump and all that stuff that's going on.
Yeah. It's all kind of
Oh,
stuff going on. It's
I'm being a cruise director a lot, like saying, you know what,
crazy.
you just got to keep at it. Don't worry. It's honestly, it's really the last woman standing. It's like I tell
What does
people
that
that
mean?
act. Well, it's like I'll explain it in two ways. One of them by saying patience. Acting is basically being on a grocery line that's really long, waiting for the
Mm.
person in front of you to pay so that you are the next one.
Can-
That's at
Yeah.
one level. That's what acting is. Get rid of
That's
everyone
a
in
really
front of you and then it's your turn. So
yeah.
that's one way I see it.
Mm.
The last man standing is because a lot of people do drop out.
They
Like
do.
every time something happens, they do drop out, and that is the theory of the last person standing. If people keep dropping out,
You know, yeah. It's so funny you say that. I started acting when I was about right after college at like 22, and all my friends had TV shows, every last one of them, and I just couldn't. I got here. I got success here and there, and it was like, oh, you're gonna make it. You're gonna be a star, and I just could not make it happen. But what I realized, they're no longer working, so I was like, okay, maybe it's my time now. Maybe everything shifts. But I do realize, even with the actors now, like the Taraji P Henson, the big actors of color, it took them a long time. It
it
wasn't
did. People
overnight,
don't know the backstory.
whole time, and they finally make it at 40, and that we were everyone knows their names, and so you just got to keep going. That's what I realized with entertainment. You just got to keep going until, like you said, it's your time. Yeah.
Right, but the other thing about keeping going is to understand that there comes a time when you're already set. Like you've done all your training, people know who you are.
Mm-hmm.
You like lawyers take continuing education. You may take a class here and there, but you have to be involved in something else
You do.
that pays the bills. So
Absolutely.
that's the trick.
Yeah. You.
A lot of people think it's got to be all or nothing. Not in this
Mm-mm.
day and age. Not Robert De Niro, Robert Duvall says that.
Mm-hmm.
All these actors came out at the same time. Robert Duvall, Al Pacino, Robert Duvall, I think his roommate was Superman.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Christopher Reeve.
I think they were
Or,
all,
or
and they were all part of that New York acting scene.
right.
And I
Yeah.
think Robert Duvall says it's got to be the only thing you ever really want to do. Well, that could have worked back in the 50s and 60s, where
Not today.
everything was a little smaller,
Absolutely.
and it doesn't work now.
It
It
doesn't.
doesn't work now. And I think that if actors were really fed the truth of how the business works, they would go into it better informed. Actors are not
Mm-hmm.
informed. They don't go after the money. They depend on all the other people they tell you in school that you need in order to make it,
Mm-hmm.
and they don't learn the business. I know that this is trivial because people keep saying it, but it's called show business. It's a
Right. It's the
business.
business. It's
It's
the
a
business
business,
of it.
and they don't have a clue because they don't teach it to you in school.
So, what's the first step that we need to focus on? If you don't mind giving us some words of wisdom before your book comes out, what do you think we should focus on as actors? The business,
uh,
a part of the book.
the part of the business is to always know your worth. Here's a story.
Mhm.
I had someone who I just started working with. She's really talented. All my people are really talented. But I just started working with her, so I still have to kind of get her to know how I am. Most of my
Right.
people have been with me for years. So little by little, I've been having her trust me. Like when they paid her for one episode, when she shot two in one day,
Hmm.
it comes back to me saying, no, no, she got paid for both of them in one check. And I go, no, no, she should get paid two of them. That there's no SAG rule that I know of that says you can shoot two episodes in one night and only get
Right.
paid for one.
One of them.
It took
Right.
us a while, but I got her paid on the second episode.
Mm.
Another story. Another actor goes and does is uh, um, gets booked on something that she found on her own. And then she loops me in with the people. And the woman, the producer or whoever it was, sends me an email saying so and so is booked. These are the dates. Very nice lady, by the way. None of these people are bad people. None of them.
Right.
Um, she's booked. This. She's going to work many hours, overnight. Blah blah blah. $700. Now that is a lot of money. I'm not saying that $700 is not a lot of money. I'm not. I'm not saying that. But I
Right.
do know that given that world, that given that information, she's
Hmm.
worth more. It's worth more.
It's
Okay.
worth more. Right. Exactly.
It's worth more. It's worth more. She was being undervalued. So I said to her, you're worth more. And, not only are you worth more, but you also need an Uber to drive you to and back because you're going to be shooting in the middle of the night. And right now, but subways in the middle of the night are not,
Yes. No.
optimal. And there's also a fitting, and you need to get paid for the fitting. So all this was incorporated in the $700. So by the end of the day, and she paid me. She was making maybe $300 working
Yeah.
12
So
hours.
much.
That's how it.
Right.
That's how it breaks down to. So I said no, and I also said to her, I'm going to go back and ask for more money. I'm going to ask for fitting money, and I'm going to ask for an Uber. But you have to understand that if she says no, you can't go back and take the $700. You got to walk away from it.
You have
And she
to.
goes,
That's
and
that's
she
a
goes,
powerful.
yes. I
That's a
said
life
to her,
lesson too. That's a life lesson. You got to understand. Listen, if you're worth that, and your agent or your manager is telling you, "Hey, you need this," it's so funny. My friend told me the same thing. He's a big fashion model agent, and he said, "Listen, this is what you need in your contract. You need a car, you need a driver, you need this, you need that, and if you don't get it, you walk away from it. You got to know your
walk away.
worth. And if you're
Yeah.
worth $500, okay, but you have to know that, hey, I am a talent. You need me, and I think people will respect that too, right?
Well, that's it. Anyway, I asked for a certain amount of money. They came back with a counter offer with Uber receipts and with fitting money and everything. And
Good,
the girl felt empowered. But I said
absolutely.
to her, you got to leave. You can't go back. Understand that. But
Mhm.
that's it. I hate to say it, but we live in a capitalist. This is capitalism where we're
Yeah,
in.
we do.
And
This
I've
is
been
Manhattan.
watching.
This is New
Well,
York.
I've been watching the documentaries called New York documentary that were shot by Rick Burns, who's not related to the other Burn who does all the documentaries. This guy's name is Rick Burns. And the
Mhm.
documentary about New York were made before 9/11 because you can still see the Twin Towers. Giuliani
Mhm.
was still mayor. So we're
Okay.
talking almost 30 years ago.
Right,
Oh my
right.
God, I don't think that documentary will be made today because the first
Mm.
hour of it, when they talk about how New York got settled by the Dutch and then
Mhm.
the Brits and everything that transpired, I told someone, a mentor of mine, I said, after you watch that first hour of that documentary, which is free on YouTube, you will
Mhm.
learn that Astor, Stuyvesant,
Mm.
not Vanderbilt, but there's another one in there. I go, they were crooks. They
Yeah, they
were
are crook.
horrible, horrible people.
We
And they
know
helped
that. That's
shape.
not.
No, no, I know that, but what one of them said, and I don't know which one said it, but they came over and they said, we want to make money because the more money you have, the closer to God you are.
Mm.
That's what they said. Now, I don't know if you've watched The Magnificent Seven with Denzel Washington,
I
the
haven't seen
remake of
the
it's
Mister movie. I haven't
it's
seen.
the
Yeah.
remake of the remake of the Japanese samurai movie, which then became a movie in the '60s with all the '60s actors that Steve McQueen, all of them. Basically it's ragamuffins that come into a town that's being basically choked to death by a money hungry person. So in the remake for Denzel, the guy comes into the church and says the same thing. Wow. Money makes you closer to God. And I'm going, my God, that line came from someone who did their research. So understand that this is capitalism. You don't go after your money, you're not respected. And that's what I try to tell my actors.
Wow, that's a powerful thing. That was my next question. You have to empower yourself, and I think that's a very powerful statement for women, especially in this industry. Understanding your worth and being able to say no. You know, we have all this going on with these trials, and you know how the world is in the industry. Just say no. Just say no.
Just say no.
And your opportunity will come up. Your opportunity will come up when you can stand firm in who you are.
Can I tell a story? Can I tell a story? This is another fun story. I have so many fun stories. These are the stories that are going to be in the book. So I was living on 129th Street, between 5th and what's next, Madison. That's a really nice block over there. I was living there. I have moved. When you have a business, you're constantly moving because you don't really know when you're going to be paying the rent next. So I've always had to find. So I've moved about 20 times in my 30 years in New York. So I always know what happened based on where I was living. So this guy is in some pharmaceutical ad, and he's the only black guy in a white print ad, and he's right there in the center. I mean, that's where your eyes go, right there in the center. So he booked it through an agent. The option was up for renewal, and they were only going to give him like $250 for the renewal. And I said, dude, say no. I will give you the $250. I will give it to you if they come back to me and say no. So here's the story. They did come back to me and say no. I gave them the $250, but they came back to me again. Really? And I got so much money out of them that the agent actually left the middle of the conversation, because I made that guy a lot. It came to the point where the guy on the other end said, if you don't take this, I'm going to cut his head off and put another head on. And I'm sure that he couldn't do that, but my level of gutsiness wasn't yet up to that conversation. Like I didn't have, I couldn't do my research really quick. Right. So I said, sure, but I got him a lot of money, and then it got renewed again. But if he hadn't said no the first time,
Well, that's important. Listen, I'm at the age now where I'm like, listen, nope. If it's not a good deal, nope. Keep it moving. Nope. I'm not signing that contract. We're not doing it. Because I know my worth. I'm at the age now. Maybe at 21, I'd be like, oh, let me just take it. I want to be on TV. No. I can go make my own TV show. If that's the price. If you're gonna pay me $200. Listen, I want to thank you. We're running out of time. What are your final thoughts for our audience? This has been an amazing show. We got to bring you back when you get the book. I'm gonna bring you back anyway.
I love this.
Yeah, it's. I love that you came, and I love that I met you, and I love that we're actually becoming friends. And it's you never know who you're gonna meet in New York. You never know.
That is true.
Give us your final
thought. My final thought is that, let me see, what is my final thought? Learn to live. Okay, here's my final thought. In order to become to a point where you feel comfortable saying no to the big things, you got to start saying no to the little things, because that's how you build the strength for the next challenge and the next challenge. As I was telling that girl to say no to that $700, I go, you got to learn now, because when you're negotiating for a pilot deal, your intestines or whatever, your gut is going to be wrapped. It's going to make you nuts.
Right.
You got to say no to the little things. And that gives you the muscle to then say no to the bigger things.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Ms. Annette. We really appreciate you coming on air. I want you to hold tight for me in the green room, okay?
Yeah, sure.
Thanks so much. Oh, tell people how we get in touch with you. Your Instagram or Facebook?
Oh, my Instagram. Actually, the way to get in touch with me on Instagram is Cuban Coffee Girl.
Okay.
And I think it's, let me just look at it. Insta, Cuban, what is my thing? Hold on. Cuban Coffee Girl. Cuban _coffee_girl.
Okay, perfect. Cuban _. We got it. I'm gonna put it under the video so you all can go check her out. Thank you so much for listening. Hold tight.
I will.
All right. I want to say thank you so much to Miss Annette Alvarez for coming on air. We had a great show. Listen, believe in yourself like Miss Annette is doing for her clients. And thank you so much for believing in me and watching Feeling Friends. We'll see you next time right here. Same place, same time. All right. Peace.